The world didn't drift into this war. It was steered. 8 days in, Iranian missiles are lighting up the skies over Tel Aviv. Air raid sirens are cutting through the night from Beirut to Riyadh. And the Persian Gulf, the arterial vein of global oil, is now a live battlefield. At least 332 Iranian civilians have been killed in a single week, more than 200 in Lebanon, and 330,000 people forcibly displaced across the Middle East. This is not a surgical strike. This is a regional war, meticulously engineered, then sold to the American public one headline at a time. And here's where it gets dangerous for you, the American citizen. The US Senate voted 47-53 to reject a war powers resolution that would have forced Trump to seek congressional approval before continuing military action. Meaning one man now holds the keys to a war with no declared exit, potentially extended by 8 weeks, according to the Pentagon itself. Both the House and the Senate voted down bipartisan resolutions aimed at stopping this conflict, not just along party lines, but along the fault line of empire versus republic. Trump has now publicly stated he wants to personally choose Iran's next leader, the same playbook used in Venezuela. The architecture of regime change is fully operational. The question you need to be asking right now isn't whether Iran can be defeated. The question is, who authorized this war, who profits from it, and what version of America comes out on the other side? Let's understand exactly what you're watching unfold right now, because it didn't start on February 28th. That date was simply the day the mask came off. Just 2 days before the bombs fell, the most substantive round of US-Iran nuclear negotiations in years had concluded in Geneva, with both parties agreeing to continue talks. 2 days. Think about that. The diplomats were still packing their bags when Washington gave the order to strike. On February 25th, Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi had stated that a historic agreement to avert military conflict was within reach. That language, within reach, tells you everything you need to know about the strategic deception embedded in this operation. The war wasn't a response to a diplomatic failure. The diplomacy was a cover, while the targeting coordinates were already locked in. Trump announced the operation in an 8-minute video posted to Truth Social around 2:30 in the morning on February 28th, while most of America slept. That detail alone should stop you cold. The most significant act of American military aggression since the invasion of Iraq was announced not through a presidential address to the nation, not through a formal declaration transmitted to Congress, but through a social media post in the middle of the night. This is what the architecture of empire looks like in the 21st century. No debate, no vote, no accountability. Oh, just a post, and then the bombs. The operation was codenamed Epic Fury by the Pentagon and Roaring Lion by Israel. The branding alone tells you who designed this choreography. Two military establishments working in perfect synchrony, with names chosen to project dominance and inevitability. And in the opening hours, Iranian Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei was killed, along with IRGC Commander Mohammad Pakpour, Defense Minister Aziz Nasirzadeh, and Mohammad Bagheri, the Chief of Staff of the Iranian Armed Forces. The entire top of the Iranian military command, decapitated in one coordinated stroke. This was not a warning shot. This was the opening move of a regime change operation that had been planned for months, if not years. Now here's where you need to follow the geography, because geography is destiny in this war. The Strait of Hormuz, the arterial choke point through which roughly 20% of the world's daily oil supply passes, has effectively been shut down. Major container shipping companies, including Maersk, CMA CGM, and Hapag-Lloyd, suspended transits through the strait and related routes such as the Red Sea. And at the same time, Houthi-controlled Yemen announced it would resume attacks on Israel and commercial ships in the Red Sea, forcing Suez Canal traffic to be rerouted around Africa's Cape of Good Hope, adding weeks to transit times and spiking shipping costs across the planet. Think about what that means for an American family trying to make sense of why their grocery bill is climbing. It's not abstract. The Strait of Hormuz closes, and the economic shockwave moves through every supply chain on Earth in a matter of days. The conflict disrupted approximately 20% of global oil supplies transiting the Strait of Hormuz, causing prices on the Brent crude oil market to rise from around $70 to over $80 per barrel within days. Stock markets experienced declines, with the Dow Jones Industrial Average falling over 400 points on March 2nd. And when asked about rising gas prices, Trump stated he is not concerned, saying, "If they rise, they rise." The man who ran on economic relief for working Americans is now publicly indifferent to the price of gasoline rising at the pump because of a war he launched without a single congressional vote. The Center for Strategic and International Studies put the cost of the first 100 hours of Operation Epic Fury at $3.7 billion, or about $891 million per day, with most of this cost, $3.5 billion, not budgeted for. That is your money, unbudgeted, unauthorized, flowing out of the American Treasury at nearly $1 billion every single day into a conflict with no declared endpoint, no defined objectives that stay consistent from one press conference to the next, and no congressional authorization of any kind. And the human cost, let's sit with that for a moment because it is being systematically underreported in mainstream American media. The preliminary death toll includes at least 1,332 people killed in Iran, at least 11 in Israel, 6 U.S. soldiers, and 9 killed in Gulf states. On March 1st, an Iranian strike hit a synagogue and residential buildings in Beit Shemesh, killing 9 people and injuring 49 others. And on the Iranian side, a strike on a girls' primary school in Manab reportedly killed nearly 100 children between the ages of 7 and 12. 100 children in a school. That fact deserves more than a single line in a Wire report. It deserves the full weight of moral reckoning that this country seems unable or unwilling to apply when the bombs are American. The war has escalated each day, affecting an additional 14 countries across the Middle East and beyond. Azerbaijan was struck by drones. Kuwait saw friendly fire. Kuwaiti air defenses mistakenly shot down 3 U.S. F-15E jets. A tanker came under attack off the coast of Kuwait, and ships have been hit in the Gulf of Oman and the Strait of Hormuz. Israel issued a mass evacuation warning for all of Beirut's southern suburbs, and on March 2nd, Hezbollah re-entered the war with missile and drone attacks on northern Israel, followed by a long-range missile attack targeting Tel Aviv on March 4th. What began as a two-party military operation has become a regional war pulling in Lebanon, Yemen, Iraq, Kuwait, Bahrain, Qatar, the UAE, Saudi Arabia, and now even European nations repositioning military assets. Germany has already withdrawn troops stationed in Bahrain back to Germany and is actively preparing to withdraw its forces from Kuwait. A French evacuation flight chartered by the government to rescue citizens stranded in the United Arab Emirates was forced to turn back mid-flight due to missile fire in the region. Europe is not watching this from a comfortable distance. The arc of instability is widening, and every government in the transatlantic alliance is recalculating its exposure in real time. Meanwhile, about 20,000 Americans have left the Middle East, with the State Department reporting thousands have already departed, primarily unassisted. Now we come to the constitutional question, the one that will define not just this war, but the shape of American democracy for a generation. Under Article 2 of the U.S. Constitution, presidents can only launch such attacks in self-defense in response to an immediate threat. Otherwise, Congress has the sole power to declare war. That is not an opinion. That is the text of the document. And yet, even in classified settings, the Trump administration could produce no evidence, none, that the U.S. was under an imminent threat of attack from Iran, according to Senator Tim Kaine, who co-sponsored the War Powers Resolution. No imminent threat. No congressional authorization, no declared war, just a presidential decree delivered via social media in the dark hours of the morning. No presidential administration has ever accepted the War Powers Act as constitutional. Not Republican presidents, not Democratic presidents, according to Secretary of State Marco Rubio. That statement is breathtaking in its honesty and its implications. The executive branch of the United States government has essentially told the American people that the law constraining presidential war-making power is, in their view, not binding. And Congress, the institution that is constitutionally mandated to declare war, has responded by largely rubber stamping that position. The War Powers Resolution is the 8th on which Congress has voted since June. All of them have failed. 8 attempts, 8 failures. The institutional capacity of the United States Congress to assert its most fundamental constitutional power, the power to decide when this country goes to war, has been functionally dismantled over the course of less than a year. Senate Republicans blocked the resolution to curb Trump's military authority in Iran, sending a clear message. GOP lawmakers are, at least for the moment, unwilling to put a check on the president's operation in the Middle East, and there's little Democrats can do about it right now. The resolution, introduced by Senator Tim Kaine, would have directed the removal of United States armed forces from hostilities within or against Iran, unless explicitly authorized by a declaration of war or a specific authorization for use of military force. That language is precise and constitutional. And yet, Senator Lindsey Graham stood on the Senate floor and argued that passing it would turn 535 members of Congress into the commander-in-chief, grinding the nation's ability to defend itself to a halt. That framing reveals the underlying ideology perfectly. Democracy itself is being reframed as an obstacle to national security. The founders would recognize that argument. They'd heard it before. They rejected it then. Some key Senate Republicans have said they're open to other measures that could rein in the Trump administration on foreign policy. Senator Tom Tillis of North Carolina told reporters he may push for a vote on an authorization for the use of military force to set the parameters of the Iran conflict, saying that if it becomes clear this is going to be a prolonged engagement, then they'll have to have that discussion. If it becomes clear, as if dropping over 6,500 bombs on a sovereign nation, killing over 1,300 people in 1 week, and shutting down 20% of the world's oil supply isn't already clarity enough about the nature and scale of this engagement. Trump's rationales and aims change constantly. 1 minute he's suggesting the mission will last a few days. The next he's saying it will go on for 5 weeks. 1 minute he calls on Iranians to seize control of your destiny. The next he says he has no interest in nation building. And Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth has consistently refused to rule out boots on the ground. In a notification to Congress on Monday, Trump cited repeated efforts to achieve a diplomatic solution to Iran's malign behavior, but added that it is not possible at this time to know the full scope and duration of military operations that may be necessary. Not possible to know. That is the executive branch of the United States, telling the American people and their elected representatives that no one can tell you how long this war will last, what it will cost, or how it ends. And Congress has voted to let that stand. The 2003 invasion of Iraq, similarly framed as targeting a dangerous regime with weapons of mass destruction, produced a multi-decade military presence, hundreds of thousands of civilian casualties, a regional security vacuum exploited by non-state actors, and a country that has never returned to the stability that even its imperfect prior condition represented. Libya in 2011 followed the same playbook. Air operations framed as liberation-produced state collapse, not democratic transition. Now, the same architecture is being deployed against a country of nearly 90 million people, with a military capacity that has already demonstrated it can reach 27 American bases simultaneously, close the world's most critical shipping lane, and sustain a 23rd wave of missile strikes 7 days into a campaign that was supposed to be brief. Given that the Islamic Republic is more likely to continue fighting than to concede, the war's trajectory may prove more protracted and unpredictable than decision makers in Washington anticipated. That assessment comes not from an anti-war activist, but from conflict analysts at ACLED, the Armed Conflict Location and Event Data Project, one of the most respected empirical research organizations in the field. Protracted, unpredictable. Those words should be reverberating through every congressional office in Washington right now. Instead, the majority voted to hand one man unlimited authority to continue. The succession crisis in Tehran adds another volatile layer to an already combustible situation. Trump has publicly stated he intends to play a direct role in selecting Iran's next leader, explicitly calling Mojtaba Khamenei, the son of the slain supreme leader and current frontrunner, an unacceptable choice. Israel has vowed to strike any successor, and Ali Larijani, secretary of Iran's Supreme National Security Council, has warned that Iranian forces are waiting for a potential U.S. ground invasion and have threatened to kill and capture thousands of American troops. The gap between the triumphalist language coming out of the Pentagon and the actual operational reality on the ground is extraordinary. The IDF has dropped over 6,500 bombs in Iran, and yet Iran named its response Operation True Promise 4, the fourth iteration, not the first, suggesting a command structure that has been stress-tested, adapted, and rebuilt through every prior confrontation with American and Israeli military power. What you're witnessing is not a war between two armies. It is a contest between two fundamentally different world orders. One side believes in the unilateral right of American military power to remake any country it chooses at a time of its choosing, without accountability to its own constitution or international law. The other side, however flawed, however repressive toward its own people, is fighting for the principle that no nation on earth should be subject to the kind of decapitation strike that was launched on February 28th, 2 days after shaking hands across a negotiating table in Geneva. The American people will remember who voted to continue an illegal, unnecessary war, as one Washington policy advisor noted in the wake of the Senate vote. That's the power the ballot box still holds. but only if the people are paying attention, only if they are watching not just the explosions over Tel Aviv and Tehran on their screens, but the quiet, devastating votes happening in the halls of Congress while the cameras point elsewhere.